Hello, my name's Charles Bunker. I'm a chartered accountant, retired, started my life as a banker. In fact, took the first part of the Institute of Bankers exams, done international corporate finance, and have the dubious record of forecasting the last 4 recessions, including the one we're about to be in. In fact, I was so certain that we were entering a banking crisis that in 2008, I wrote to the Financial Times and to the Economist, warning what was going to happen and making it very clear that suggesting that the sovereign wealth funds should refinance, recapitalise the bank's balance sheet. So I've got a pretty good track record of forecasting what the hell's going in through the economy, and I used nothing other than observation and common sense. That's compared to our brilliant people from Oxford who've studied PPE, the E for economics. They sit in our Treasury, they sit in the Bank of England, and somehow they have completely and utterly managed to cock up this country's economic affairs. How they've done it and why they've done it is beyond me. But I'm bringing you this series of lectures because I don't believe that this has been done through ignorance and naivety. There is something that's going on here. It is the duty of the Bank of England to keep inflation rates at below 2%. It is their obligation, and every year they have to write to the Chancellor of the Exchequer to explain why they are going to miss those rates. And it was absolutely apparent from July last year, long before Putin marched into Ukraine, that this government, this Bank of England, were going to fail disastrously on inflation. When they were talking about inflation in July last year, it was running in double digits in the small little business I was running. So what world these guys were living on, I don't know. But I'm now going to start by explaining to the Bank of England why inflation is so darn serious. So let us look at an inflation rate of 10%, double digits. And we're in inflation at least in excess of double digits. We all know it. We can see it in our shopping baskets. And let us assume that we have an interest rate of 2%, quite a useful figure because that's what it's been running at. And so if you're a guy with £100, you would have found that with inflation running at 10%, next year would only buy you £90, and the year after that it would only buy you £80 of stuff. And if inflation was to run at 10% over 10 years, you would only end up with 1/3 of your original saving. So let's put that in a guy who retires with a pension pot at the age of 65, 10 years after the management of this economy by this Bank of England, he's only going to have 1/3 of his purchasing power left. That is frightening, and yet they appear to be doing absolutely nothing about it, and certainly they've been doing nothing about it for far too long. But they say, ho, 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 don't worry. We're paying you interest on your money. We're giving you 2% on your £100 savings, and after 10 years you've got £20 in your bank account, so your loss really isn't £65. Spending power of £35, spent a reduction in spending power. Your reduction in spending power is only £45 because you've had all the interest. No, what it means is you've lost money and you've had no income. Though this is disastrous. It is why, as a fundamental rule of economics, interest rates have to be higher than inflation because people need a real return on their money, otherwise they don't invest. There's a real, well, why isn't businesses investing? Well, perhaps they're not getting a real return on their money. That's why they're not doing these things. However, let's look at what this means in the bond market, right? Because in the bond market, let us say that you have bought £250,000, £250,000 of government gilts. And you've bought it on a 10-year instrument paying a yield of 3%. And therefore, you're going to get from your investment an income of £7,500 a year. But interest rates have moved. They've gone up now to 5%. You can only still get £7,500 investment on your money because that's the contract that you entered, that was entered into when this gilt was issued in the first place. So now what's happened is your gilt, your treasury stock, has fallen in value in the market from £150,000, from £250,000 to £150,000, and therefore you as an investor in gilts, your pension fund as an investor in gilts, will have lost money. So there is a fundamental rule that can be learnt, and that is, as interest rates rise, asset prices fall. As interest rates fall, asset prices rise. It is an immutable law of economics that cannot be denied. Right? Let's remember it. Interest rates rise, asset prices fall. Interest rates fall, asset prices rise, and we can see it here in a simple mathematical exercise. So what the hell's been going on? How on earth have we got inflation at this kind of rate? Well, money circulates around an economy. In a nice balanced economy, we have our banks, Lloyds, Barclays, we have our Bank of England sitting above them, and money moves around a nice economy. Nice balanced economy. That nice balanced economy is what the Bank of England should be aiming to achieve. Except, God bless their cotton socks, in the banking crisis, they managed to reduce the amount of money that was flowing in the economy by a recession. They literally created a recession because there was a reduction in M4, M0, call it what you will. The Bank of England measures all the time how fast money is circulating in the economy. And for 36 months under George Osborne's, while he was Chancellor of the Exchequer, the amount of money circulating in the economy reduced, and that led to a huge recession. And we all know the pain of it. Oh, but hang on a moment. Let's just remember one thing, that while this was going on, and there was a recession in the amount of money flowing into the real economy, there was a thing called quantitative easing starting. Right? And so, while there was a reduction in the real economy, in the banking economy, there was quantitative easing going, and this was money being pumped into the financial institutions. Wasn't being given to you and I, wasn't being given to ordinary businesses. This was being given to the financial institutions, and I will come back to in a separate video as to what these financial institutions did. So, but that gave rise to QE. That quantitative easing didn't create inflation in the general economy. What it did was that led to asset price inflation. And that asset price inflation was seen in the amount of money that was being paid for private equity businesses. It saw an increase in the value of the stock exchange. It saw enormous transfer of wealth to a small cadre of people who had influence on the Bank of England. Then what happens is we go get COVID-19, and along comes the government, and now it pours more money into the economy in its support packages, and it is that which creates the hyperinflation that we are seeing today. So there's been two lots of money. By the way, this QE only pumped about 3% into the real economy. It didn't help the ordinary man in the street. It helped the financial institutions. It helped its mates in the City of London. And let's just remember that. Remember our Chancellor George Osborne? The guy that when he left, he got a job with BlackRock for 1 day a week on £600,000 a year for 1 day a week. £600,000? Really? If that's not deferred consideration for quantitative easing, pumping money into the financial markets, I don't know what is. So we need to think about that very carefully as to what's been going on. But what we've had here is we've had money being pumped in by the Bank of England, going primarily out in quantitative easing. And now we've had money pumped into the economy by the government. And what that has done is create a hyperinflation that we're seeing today. And all this happened and was in play before Putin marched into Ukraine. So, ladies and gentlemen, in the next video, I'll explain what happened to the investment, the quantitative easing investments, and where that money went and why all of us missed out. Thank you for listening so far. Bye-bye.